Elisangela always believed her life was a fairy tale. Married to Pedro for 8 years, she poured her heart into their relationship, balancing her demanding job as a corporate analyst with the warmth of home. They shared dreams of starting a family, buying a cozy house, and growing old together. Pedro, with his charming smile and promises of loyalty, was her safe haven, or at least, that's what she thought. Lately, however, Pedro's late nights at work had become more frequent, his excuses more vague. One night, while organizing their shared schedule, Elisangela found a cryptic message on Pedro's cell phone, which he'd left unlocked on the living room table. "I can't wait to see you tomorrow, my love," it said, signed by an unsaved number. Her heart raced, and a wave of nausea washed over her. Who was this person? Why wasn't Pedro mentioning anything? Determined not to jump to conclusions, she held back her anxiety, but the seed of doubt had already been planted. That message was just the beginning of a truth that would destroy her world. What Elisangela didn't know was that the sender was closer than she could ever imagine. In the following days, Elisangela tried to ignore the premonition, but Pedro's every gesture seemed fraught with secrets. He avoided eye contact, answered her questions with monosyllables, and left the house in a hurry, claiming endless meetings. She began to notice small details: the strange perfume on his shirt, the cell phone always face down, the calls he answered in another room. The trust she had placed in him began to crumble like a sandcastle under the tide. One night, while Pedro slept, Elisangela gave in to her curiosity and checked his phone again. What she found stopped her: loving messages, photos, and plans to meet with none other than Carla, her own sister. The words exchanged between them were a dagger in her chest. "You are my soulmate, Carla," Pedro had written. Elisangela felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. How could her sister, with whom she shared secrets and childhood memories, betray her like this? The weight of betrayal was unbearable, but she decided not to confront them yet. Elisangela's pain was a mixture of rage and despair. She spent sleepless nights revisiting every moment of their marriage, searching for signs she had missed. How could she have been so blind? Pedro had always been charismatic, the kind of man who drew attention, but she trusted him blindly. And Carla, her younger sister, always so close, always asking for advice. How could she have been so false? Elisangela remembered the times Carla would visit their house, laughing with Pedro, praising his jokes. Now every memory felt poisoned. She wanted to scream, to confront them, but something inside her urged calm. Confronting them now would be giving in to her anger, and she wanted answers before acting. She resolved to observe more closely, pretending nothing had changed. During the day, she maintained the facade of a devoted wife, but at night she planned her next steps. The betrayal was a double blow, not only for Pedro, but for Carla, who knew her every vulnerability. Elisangela decided that if they thought they could destroy her, they were very wrong. Elisangela began collecting evidence driven by a mixture of grief and determination. She saved screenshots of messages, recorded suspicious calls, and jotted down every detail she could use in the future. Meanwhile, Pedro and Carla continued their charade, unaware that she knew everything. In public, Pedro was the perfect husband, and Carla, the attentive sister. But Elisangela saw through their mask. Every fake smile, every forced hug, fueled her resolve. She felt the weight of betrayal in every fiber of her being, but also a growing strength. It was no longer about saving the marriage. It was about regaining her dignity. One night, while Pedro was showering, she found a hotel receipt in his wallet, dated from a supposed business trip. The name of the hotel was familiar, the same one where she and Pedro had celebrated their 5th wedding anniversary. The irony made her laugh bitterly. Elisangela knew she needed a plan, and fast. The truth was about to come out, and she would make sure it came out at the right time. Pedro and Carla's betrayal transformed Elisangela. The woman who once lived to please now burned with a greater purpose: justice. She didn't just want to confront them, she wanted them to feel the same emptiness she felt. Every message she read, every piece of evidence she collected, strengthened her resolve. She began to realize that the betrayal wasn't a reflection of her failure, but of their weakness. Pedro and Carla had chosen the path of cowardice, and this made them vulnerable. Elisangela decided not to let herself be consumed by grief. Instead, she channeled her anger into a meticulous plan. She wouldn't tell anyone, not even her mother, who always defended Carla. For now, she would play their game, smiling as she plotted. What Pedro and Carla didn't know was that Elisangela was no longer the naive woman they knew. The betrayal had devastated her, yes, but it had also awakened her, and when the time came, she would ensure the truth came out in an unforgettable way. Elisangela was still trembling from the discovery of the betrayal, but decided to remain calm so as not to arouse suspicion. Pedro, oblivious to her knowledge, announced a last-minute business trip that would prevent him from accompanying her to a spa weekend, a gift she had planned to rekindle the flame of their marriage. The excuse sounded too convenient, and his evasive tone only confirmed her doubts. Instead of confronting him, Elisangela saw an opportunity. She suggested she would take her mother, Donna Clara, to the spa, maintaining the facade of an understanding wife. Pedro, clearly relieved, agreed without hesitation, unaware that each lie was bringing him closer to ruin. Donna Clara, ever so practical, accepted the invitation enthusiastically, oblivious to the tension in her daughter's eyes. Elisangela, for her part, felt a mixture of hope and dread. What if it was all a misunderstanding? But deep down, she knew the messages weren't lying. As she packed her bags, she planned every step, ready for whatever truth she might encounter. The spa, which was supposed to be a refuge, was about to become the stage for a devastating revelation. The trip to the spa was supposed to be a relaxing experience, but Elisangela could barely hide her anxiety. Donna Clara chatted excitedly about beauty treatments and massages, oblivious to the burden her daughter carried. The hotel, a luxury resort with ocean views, was the same one where Pedro and Elisangela had spent happy times. Every corner of the place brought back memories that now seemed tarnished. As they settled in, Elisangela kept her eyes peeled, searching for signs of anything out of the ordinary. That night during dinner at the hotel restaurant, she felt a chill run down her spine when she heard a familiar laugh. It was Carla, her sister, sitting a few tables away, with a man with his back to her. Elisangela's heart raced. She excused herself from her mother and approached discreetly, hiding behind a column. When the man turned his face, the truth hit her like a blow. It was Pedro. They laughed, exchanging caresses, oblivious to the world. Elisangela fought back tears, but her anger burned. She returned to the table, a plan beginning to form in her mind. The shock of seeing Pedro and Carla together at the hotel was like a knife twisting in Elisangela's chest. She didn't confront them there, not yet. Instead, she took discreet photos with her cell phone, capturing every moment of their blatant betrayal. Donna Clara, noticing her daughter's change in mood, asked if everything was okay, but Elisangela brushed it off, claiming exhaustion. That night, alone in her room, she reviewed the photos, each one more painful than the last. Pedro and Carla acted like a loving couple, without any shame. Elisangela wondered how she could have been so naive, but the pain soon gave way to determination. She wouldn't let them destroy her. She kept the photos as ammunition, knowing they would be crucial in the future. The next day, she pretended to enjoy the spa, smiling at her mother as she planned her next steps. Pedro and Carla, confident in their lie, didn't suspect they were being watched. Elisangela decided that silence would be her weapon, but the time for action was fast approaching. The spa, which promised peace, had sealed their fate. Back to her routine, Elisangela carried the weight of what she'd seen, but also a newfound clarity. Pedro returned from his business trip with a false smile, telling vague stories about meetings and clients. His every word was a reminder of the betrayal, but Elisangela remained cool, planning in secret. She began organizing her evidence, the messages, the photos from the spa, the receipts she'd found. Each piece was a brick in the wall she would build against Pedro and Carla. Donna Clara, still unaware of the truth, praised Elisangela's patience with Pedro's exhaustive work, which only increased her anger. How could her mother be so blind? But she decided to say nothing for now. Donna Clara had always defended Carla, and Elisangela needed more time to ensure her justice was unquestionable. The betrayal at the spa had been the final blow, but also the catalyst for her transformation. She was no longer the naive wife. She was a woman ready to turn the tables. What Pedro and Carla didn't know was that Elisangela was already one step ahead, and their downfall would be epic. The revealing spa marked a turning point for Elisangela. Images of Pedro and Carla together burned in her mind, but instead of drowning in grief, she found strength in her anger. She knew confronting them now would be premature. He needed a plan that would make them feel the weight of their actions. Pedro's lies about the business trip were just the tip of the iceberg, and the audacity of showing off with Carla in a place so significant to their marriage was unforgivable. Elisangela decided the truth would come out, but at the perfect time. She returned home more determined than ever, with the photos stored in a secure file and a heart hardened by the betrayal. Donna Clara, still oblivious, tried to cheer her up with conversations about the future, but Elisangela no longer saw a future with Pedro. The spa, which should have been a refuge, became the setting where she realized there was no turning back. From that moment on, her every step would be calculated and justice inevitable. Elisangela returned from the spa with unshakable resolve. The image of Pedro and Carla together, laughing as if she didn't exist, was a poison that kept her awake but also drove her. She wouldn't confront Pedro with tears or screams. Her response would be cold, calculated, and definitive. Without saying a word about what she had discovered, she contacted a trusted lawyer and began divorce proceedings. Each signed document was a step toward regaining her dignity. Pedro, still believing his lie was safe, noticed her coldness but attributed it to work stress. Elisangela, however, had already secretly blocked his number, redirecting his calls to voicemail. She began planning her move to a smaller apartment far from the house they shared, where every corner now seemed stained by betrayal. Donna Clara, oblivious to the truth, asked why she seemed so distant, but Elisangela only smiled, promising to explain everything at the right time. Silence was her weapon, and she would use it to protect her strategy. Pedro and Carla had no idea that the game was changing, and Elisangela was in control. On the day the divorce papers were finalized, Elisangela acted with surgical precision. She waited for Pedro to leave for another of his meetings and packed his things in a few hours. She left no notes, no explanations, just the emptiness of her absence. When Pedro returned, he found the house half empty, her belongings carefully removed. The wedding ring, which he had given her with promises of eternal love, sat alone on the kitchen table, a silent symbol of the end. He tried to call, but discovered his number was blocked. Confused, he texted Carla, who also didn't understand what was happening. Elisangela, now settled in her new apartment, felt a bitter relief. The pain of betrayal still burned, but each step she took her away from the past. She avoided all contact with Carla, ignoring her sister's curious messages, which seemed to be testing the waters. Donna Clara, worried, insisted on knowing the reason for the sudden change, but Elisangela remained firm. "It's better this way, Mom. One day you'll understand." The divorce was just the beginning of her righteousness. Keeping the reason for the divorce a secret required strength from Elisangela she didn't know she possessed. Pedro tried to approach her at work with a rehearsed speech about misunderstandings and second chances, but she cut him off with an icy glare. "Sign the papers, Pedro. We have nothing more to say." Her voice was firm, leaving no room for negotiation. He, disconcerted, signed, unaware that she was keeping all the evidence of the betrayal. Elisangela also cut ties with Carla, who sent messages feigning concern as if nothing had happened. Every attempt to contact her was ignored, a reminder that Elisangela was no longer willing to play their game. In the new apartment, she began rebuilding her life, focusing on work and herself. The silence she imposed on them both was deafening, a way of punishing them without saying a word. Donna Clara, still in the dark, tried to mediate, but Elisangela refused to budge. She knew revealing the truth now would be premature. Justice would come, but at the perfect time, when Pedro and Carla least expected it. Elisangela's new life was an exercise in resilience. Away from Pedro, she found peace in the small rituals: coffee in the morning, long hours at work, and nights reorganizing her plans. The divorce, though painful, brought a freedom she hadn't felt in years. At work, she excelled, earning her boss's trust with impeccable projects. Pedro, on the other hand, seemed lost, sending formal emails seeking explanations she would never give. Carla, sensing her sister's coldness, began to pressure Donna Clara to intercede, but Elisangela remained impenetrable. "I'll move on, Mum. Let them deal with their own choices," she would say, her tone mixing hurt and determination. She kept the spa photos and messages in a secure file, knowing they would be her ultimate weapon. The silence she imposed wasn't weakness, but strategy. Pedro and Carla lived under the illusion they had gotten away with it, but Elisangela was building something bigger. Each day made her stronger, while the two of them, unknowingly, walked towards their own ruin. The silent divorce marked Elisangela's transformation. She was no longer the woman who trusted blindly, who forgave out of love. Every step she took, the change, the stonewalling, the secrecy, was an affirmation of her strength. Pedro and Carla, confident in their deception, were unaware of the void she had left in their lives. He felt her absence at home, at work, in every corner where harmony had once existed. Carla, in turn, was beginning to realize that the sister she had betrayed would no longer be a part of her life. Elisangela, meanwhile, was rebuilding herself, channeling her pain into purpose. She knew that the secrecy of her divorce was her greatest asset. Revealing the betrayal now would be satisfying, but waiting for the right moment would be devastating. Donna Clara, still confused, demanded answers, but Elisangela simply said, "When the time is right, everyone will know." Silence was her armor, and she wielded it masterfully. 3 years had passed since the divorce, and Elisangela had finally found balance. Her new apartment was a refuge. Her job at the company was promoting her to new heights, and the pain of betrayal, though present, no longer defined her. She avoided any news of Pedro and Carla, maintaining the silence that had protected her since the spa. But one afternoon, while organizing reports, the doorbell rang. It was Donna Clara, her mother, with a hesitant look and an envelope in her hands. "Elisangela, we need to talk," she said, entering uninvited. Elisangela's heart sank. She sensed bad news. Donna Clara, with a mixture of nervousness and determination, handed her the envelope, an invitation to Pedro and Carla's wedding. "They're getting married next month," she announced, watching her daughter warily. Elisangela felt her old anger resurface, but she restrained herself, opening the invitation with trembling hands. Pedro and Carla's audacity shocked her. How dare they invite her? Donna Clara, noticing the tense silence, added, "I'm going to the wedding, daughter, and I have a plan." Her mother's enigmatic tone left her intrigued but suspicious. Donna Clara sat on the sofa, trying to explain her decision. "I know you suffered, Elisangela, but we need to close this cycle. They think they can erase the past, but they won't." Her words were firm, but Elisangela wasn't sure she could trust them. For years, Donna Clara had defended Carla, downplaying her flaws, and now she was asking her to consider attending the wedding. The idea was absurd. Elisangela held the invitation, the elegant paper contrasting with the betrayal it represented. "Why would I go, Mother? To watch their happiness while they pretend they didn't destroy me?" Her voice trembled with indignation. Donna Clara, however, insisted, "It's not about them. It's about you. About showing that you're bigger than that." She mentioned the plan again, but refused to give details, saying only that it would be a surprise they'll never forget. Elisangela, torn between hurt and curiosity, kept the invitation. The idea of facing Pedro and Carla scared her, but the promise of a plan intrigued her. Could her mother, always so protective of Carla, finally be on her side? In the following days, Elisangela couldn't get the invitation out of her head. The event was to be held at a luxurious venue, a place Pedro could never have afforded before. How had he and Carla gotten this far? She discreetly researched and discovered that Pedro had gotten a promotion at the company where they both worked, while Carla was flaunting herself on social media as a rising influencer. Her anger grew, but the mention of Donna Clara's plan kept her alert. She confronted her mother by phone, demanding more details, but Donna Clara remained evasive. "Trust me, Elisangela, you won't have to do anything, just be there." The idea of being in the same room as Pedro and Carla sickened her, but the mystery of the plan made her hesitate. What if her mother was plotting something that would finally expose the truth? Elisangela decided not to RSVP, but she didn't decline the invitation either. She needed to understand what Donna Clara was planning. Each passing day increased the tension, like a rope about to snap. The wedding was approaching, and with it the promise of a turnaround. Elisangela spent sleepless nights debating whether to attend the wedding. Part of her wanted to stay away, to protect the peace she had worked so hard to achieve, but another, deeper part yearned for justice. The invitation, still on her table, was a constant reminder of the betrayal. She imagined Pedro and Carla smiling at the guests, as if they had never destroyed her life. Their audacity infuriated her, but Donna Clara's confidence in the so-called plan kept her intrigued. What if her mother really was ready to confront Carla? Elisangela decided to talk to Donna Clara again, searching for clues. "Mom, why are you so sure of this? What do you know that I don't?" Donna Clara, with an enigmatic smile, replied, "I know everything, daughter, and they will learn that actions have consequences." The answer, though vague, lit a spark of hope. Elisangela began to consider the possibility of attending, not to celebrate, but to witness whatever her mother was planning. The stage was set, and the tension grew every day. The approaching wedding brought an urgency Elisangela hadn't expected. Donna Clara called frequently, insisting that her presence would be crucial. "You don't have to say anything, daughter. Just come and see." The confidence in her mother's voice was disconcerting, almost as if she'd known about the betrayal all along. Elisangela, still hesitant, began to prepare herself mentally. She bought an elegant dress not to impress, but to show that she was no longer the broken woman Pedro and Carla knew. The unexpected invitation had reopened old wounds, but it had also rekindled her determination. If Donna Clara had a plan, Elisangela wanted to be there to see it unfold. She imagined Pedro and Carla's faces when they spotted her in the crowd, the surprise that would soon give way to fear. Her mother's plan remained a mystery, but Elisangela felt she was about to change everything. 3 years after the betrayal, the moment to face them was approaching, and she was ready for whatever came. Elisangela entered the event hall with her heart racing, but her head held high. The venue, decorated with white flowers and soft lights, exuded a false perfection. Pedro and Carla, the center of attention, smiled at the guests, oblivious to the approaching storm. Elisangela chose a discreet seat next to Donna Clara, who held a remote control with a determined glint in her eye. The ceremony began with rehearsed vows and polite applause, but Elisangela barely listened, focused on her mother's plan. When the master of ceremonies announced a special moment, Donna Clara stood asking to speak. The hall fell silent, curious. She connected a laptop to a projector, and the screen behind Pedro and Carla came to life. The first image was an old photo, Elisangela and Pedro on their wedding day beaming. The guests murmured in confusion. Then Donna Clara began to narrate, "Today we celebrate love, but also truth." Her tone was firm, almost cutting. Elisangela felt a chill run down her spine, knowing that the secret of her betrayal was about to be exposed before everyone. The slideshow continued, each image a blow. Donna Clara showed messages exchanged between Pedro and Carla, screenshots Elisangela had provided years earlier, unaware her mother had kept them. While Elisangela was building a home, Pedro and Carla were plotting behind her back, Donna Clara said, her voice thick with indignation. The crowd gasped as a photo from the spa appeared, showing Pedro and Carla together, laughing, oblivious to the suffering they were causing. Elisangela watched Pedro and Carla's faces, his pale, eyes wide, hers red with embarrassment trying to hide. The guests whispered in shock as Donna Clara continued, relentless. "They betrayed not only Elisangela, but the trust of all of us," she declared, pointing at the couple. Elisangela felt a mixture of relief and tension. The truth finally was in plain sight. Carla tried to interrupt, her voice trembling. "Mum, please stop." But Donna Clara just held up her hand, silencing her. The room, now deathly silent, awaited the next slide, and Elisangela knew there was no turning back. Donna Clara didn't hesitate. The presentation moved on to emails Pedro had sent to Carla, planning their future while still married to Elisangela. Every word projected on the screen was irrefutable proof of the betrayal. They thought they could erase the past and build a new story, Donna Clara said, her tone mixing pain and justice. But the truth always finds a way. The guests, previously smiling, now cast disapproving looks at the couple. Some of Pedro's friends stood up, embarrassed, while Carla's family covered their faces. Elisangela, sitting silently, felt the weight of years of hurt begin to dissipate. Her mother's courage surprised her. Donna Clara, who had always protected Carla, now exposed her mercilessly. A short video appeared on the screen, a recording of Pedro at the spa, laughing with Carla, unaware that Elisangela had filmed them. The sound of laughter echoed in the room, a cruel reminder of the betrayal. Carla, desperate, tried to turn off the projector, but the technician, an ally of Donna Clara, stopped her. The truth was out in the open, and no one could ignore it. The climax of the performance came with a letter written by Elisangela, read by Donna Clara with restrained emotion. "I loved Pedro with all my heart, but he chose betrayal. My sister, who was supposed to protect me, was his accomplice. Today I move on, but they will carry the weight of what they did." The words echoed and tears flowed among the guests. Pedro, motionless, seemed to shrink on the stage, while Carla sobbed, begging her mother to stop. But Donna Clara ended with one last image. Elisangela on the day she signed the divorce, smiling with a strength few knew. "My daughter is stronger than the pain they caused her," said Donna Clara, looking directly at Pedro and Carla. The hall erupted in murmurs, some applauding Elisangela's courage, others shocked by the revelation. Elisangela, for the first time, felt that justice was beginning to be served. Pedro and Carla's public humiliation was just the beginning, and she knew her mother had planned every detail with precision. Their marriage, now in ruins, marked the beginning of their downfall. When the performance ended, the silence in the hall was deafening. Donna Clara turned off the projector and returned to her seat next to Elisangela, who shook her hand in thanks. Pedro tried to speak, stammering an apology, but the guests' scornful looks silenced him. Carla, in tears, ran backstage, unable to face the crowd. The ceremony, which should have been a moment of celebration, became a spectacle of shame. Elisangela, though shaken, felt a strange peace. The truth, exposed by her mother, was the first step in her redemption. Donna Clara, with tears in her eyes, whispered, "I always knew, daughter. I just waited for the right moment." Elisangela realized that her mother, despite years of protecting Carla, had chosen justice. The guests began to leave, many greeting Elisangela respectfully, while Pedro and Carla remained alone on stage, facing the consequences of their choices. The hall, previously filled with laughter and toasts, now pulsed with tension. Donna Clara's performance had left the guests in shock, their faces wavering between disbelief and indignation. Pedro remained frozen on stage, his impeccable suit contrasting with his panicked expression. Carla, her wedding dress stained with tears, tried to run backstage, but Donna Clara stopped her with a sharp look. "You can't run away from this, Carla," she said, her voice echoing through the microphone. The slides continued on the screen, displaying messages and photos that exposed the betrayal. Guests whispered, pointing at the couple, while some filmed the scene with their cell phones. Elisangela, sitting next to her mother, felt the weight of years of pain turn to relief. The humiliation Pedro and Carla had inflicted on her was now being turned against them. Carla, desperate, cried out, "Mum, this is cruel, please stop." But Donna Clara, implacable, replied, "What you did to your sister was cruel." The room, filled with murmurs, witnessed the couple's public downfall. The truth, mercilessly exposed, was a justice Elisangela had never imagined. Carla, her face flushed and her eyes filled with tears, tried again to interrupt her mother, advancing toward the projector. "That's a lie, you don't understand," she screamed, but her voice trembled, betraying her guilt. Donna Clara, with frightening calm, advanced a new slide, an audio recording of Pedro confessing to Carla that he had never truly loved Elisangela. His voice, cold and calculating, echoed through the room, silencing any attempt at defense. The guests, now standing, cast contemptuous glances. Carla's aunt, visibly embarrassed, left the room, while Pedro's friends shook their heads in disappointment. Donna Clara continued, "You destroyed a family out of selfishness. Today everyone will know who you really are." Elisangela watched, heart pounding, as the crowd absorbed every word. Pedro and Carla's embarrassment was palpable. He, mute, seemed to shrink, while she sobbed, unable to face the gazes. The presentation was not only a revelation, but a public sentence, and Donna Clara executed it with precision. The tension in the room reached a peak when Donna Clara showed a final slide, a photo of Elisangela on the day she left Pedro's house, her look of determination contrasting with the pain of the past. "My daughter suffered in silence, but today she is here, stronger than ever," Donna Clara declared, pointing to Elisangela. The guests turned to her, some applauding spontaneously, others with tears in their eyes. Carla, desperate, tried to explain herself, but her words were lost in sobs. "I didn't want to hurt anyone," she cried, but no one seemed convinced. Pedro finally tried to speak, but his voice faltered under the weight of the stares. Donna Clara, with a tone that mixed anger and sadness, concluded, "You chose this path. Now, face the consequences." The room, now a sea of shocked faces, watched the couple's collapse. Elisangela, though shaken, felt a surge of pride in her mother, who had turned her marriage into a courtroom affair. The public humiliation was just the beginning of the justice that awaited Pedro and Carla. As the guests began to disperse, the awkwardness hung like a fog. Pedro and Carla, isolated on the stage, were the focus of disapproving glances. Some family members tried to console them, but most walked away, embarrassed by association. Donna Clara, her mission accomplished, took Elisangela's hand and led her out of the hall, ignoring Carla's pleas to talk. "You don't deserve my daughter, nor my pity," Donna Clara said before turning away. Elisangela, walking beside her mother, felt a mixture of relief and adrenaline. The public exposure didn't erase the pain, but it did restore her voice. Videos of the performance were already circulating on social media, with comments condemning Pedro and Carla. What should have been their happiest day had become a public humiliation, masterfully orchestrated by Donna Clara. Elisangela knew the story didn't end there. The embarrassment at the wedding was just the first blow. Pedro and Carla would still face more consequences, and she would be ready to watch. The impact of the revelation continued to resonate after the ceremony. As Elisangela and Donna Clara left the ballroom, guests continued to discuss the scandal, many praising Donna Clara's courage and Elisangela's resilience. Pedro tried to approach some friends, but was met with awkward silences. Carla, alone backstage, wept, knowing her image as the perfect bride was shattered. Donna Clara's performance had not only exposed the betrayal, but also transformed the wedding into a symbol of justice. Elisangela, for the first time in years, felt the weight of the betrayal begin to lift. Her mother's strength, which she had underestimated, surprised her. "I always knew, daughter. I just waited for the right moment," Donna Clara repeated, with a firm smile. Pedro and Carla's public embarrassment was a victory, but Elisangela knew there was more to come. The hall, still in shock from Donna Clara's performance, seemed suspended in time. Pedro and Carla, exposed as traitors, faced the brunt of the guests' gazes. Donna Clara, standing center stage, took the microphone once more, ignoring Carla's sobs. "You thought you could erase what you did to my daughter," she said, her voice firm and filled with indignation. "Elisangela is stronger than your lies, and today everyone knows it." The guests, some with tears in their eyes, applauded, while others murmured their support. Elisangela, sitting in the audience, felt her heart sink, but also a new strength. Her father, Sir Antonio, who until then had remained silent by her side, stood up, looking proudly at his wife. He took Donna Clara's hand, signaling it was time to go. Before leaving the stage, Donna Clara gave Pedro and Carla one last look. "You reap what you sow." The couple, now alone on stage, faced public humiliation, while Elisangela and her parents prepared to leave, leaving behind a hall in disarray. As Donna Clara descended from the stage, Carla tried to run after her, begging, "Mom, please listen to me." But Donna Clara turned, her gaze a mixture of disappointment and firmness. "You stopped being my daughter the moment you betrayed your sister," she said, each word cutting like a blade. Pedro, still stunned, tried to intervene, but Sir Antonio cut him off with a firm gesture. "You have nothing more to say to our family," he declared, his voice grave. The guests, now standing, watched the scene with a mixture of shock and fascination. Elisangela, beside her parents, felt a wave of gratitude. Her mother, who had defended Carla for so long, had finally chosen justice. Her father, always reserved, displayed his loyalty in silence. Together the three walked toward the exit, leaving Pedro and Carla to deal with the disapproving crowd. The hall, once a scene of celebration, was now a battlefield where truth had triumphed. Elisangela knew that that moment marked the end of an era and the beginning of her redemption. Elisangela and her parents' exit was a spectacle in itself. As they crossed the ballroom, the guests parted, some offering words of support, others simply watching in respectful silence. Donna Clara, her head held high, held Elisangela's hand, while Sir Antonio walked beside her, a pillar of silent strength. Outside, the cool night air brought relief, as if the weight of betrayal had been lifted from the ballroom. Elisangela looked at her mother, still processing the courage she had witnessed. "Why didn't you tell me the plan before?" she asked, her voice breaking. Donna Clara smiled, tears in her eyes. "I wanted you to see that you were never alone, daughter." Sir Antonio added, "We always knew who you were, Elisangela." They didn't. The humiliation of Pedro and Carla, now trapped in their own nightmare, was the justice Elisangela had so desperately sought. The ceremony's outcome was not only a victory, but a promise that truth would always prevail. The family, united, left the venue with dignity, while chaos reigned inside. In the ballroom, Pedro and Carla tried to salvage what remained of the ceremony, but it was too late. The guests, now dispersed, commented on the scandal, many sharing videos on social media. Pedro, pale-faced, tried to talk to some friends but was met with coldness. Carla, sitting in a corner, cried as her makeup ran, a reflection of her crumbling reputation. The party music, which was supposed to play until dawn, was turned off, and the buffet was untouched. The public humiliation was complete, and the couple knew nothing would ever be the same. Elisangela, already in the car with her parents, felt a peace she hadn't experienced in years. Donna Clara's courage and Sir Antonio's silent support reminded her that she had a family who valued her. The outcome of the ceremony didn't erase the pain of the past, but it gave Elisangela the power to move forward. Pedro and Carla, now exposed, would face the consequences alone, while she walked toward a future free from her shadows. The impact of Donna Clara's confrontation reverberated beyond the ballroom. As Elisangela and her parents walked away, social media was already buzzing with the story. "Wedding cancelled due to betrayal revealed by the bride's mother," read one viral post. Pedro and Carla, once confident in their new life, were now targets of public judgment. Elisangela, though exhausted, felt a bitter satisfaction. The ceremony, which was supposed to consecrate their union, became the stage for her downfall. Donna Clara, in the passenger seat, held her daughter's hand. "You deserved this, Elisangela, and they deserve what's coming next." So Antonio nodded with a rare smile. The family's unity contrasted with the isolation of Pedro and Carla, who remained in the ballroom, facing looks of contempt. The outcome of the ceremony was more than humiliation. It was proof that justice, when well planned, could be devastating. Elisangela knew the story didn't end there, but that moment marked her victory. The humiliation at Pedro and Carla's wedding rekindled Elisangela's determination. Now, she set her sights on the next battlefield: work. They both worked at the same company, a multinational where Elisangela was shining as a senior analyst, while Pedro, thanks to a recent promotion, held a management position. The exposure at the wedding had already damaged his reputation, but Elisangela knew that the corporate environment required more than gossip to bring him down. She had a trump card, an audio recording during Donna Clara's presentation, where a panicked Pedro admitted his betrayal in front of the guests. The perfect moment arrived with a strategy meeting, where Pedro was to present a crucial project to the board. Elisangela, scheduled to review the data, saw an opportunity to turn the tables. While he prepared to impress his bosses, she carefully planned her intervention. The audio loaded onto her laptop was a ticking time bomb. Elisangela entered the meeting room with a subtle smile, ready to transform Pedro's arrogance into desperation. The company, unbeknownst to her, was about to witness justice as precise as it was devastating. At the meeting, Pedro began his presentation confidently, displaying graphs and figures with his usual ease. Elisangela, seated at the table, watched silently, waiting for the right moment. When he opened the floor for questions, she raised her hand with a calmness that belied her intention. "Before we continue, I think the team deserves transparency about the leadership of this project," she said, her voice firm. The intrigued directors encouraged her to continue. Elisangela connected her laptop to the projector and played the audio from the wedding. Pedro's trembling voice echoed in the room, confessing his betrayal and begging Donna Clara to stop. His shocked colleagues exchanged glances, while Pedro turned pale, stammering an explanation. "This is personal. It has no place here," he exclaimed. But Elisangela interrupted him. "What's personal is cheating on your wife with her sister while working with us." The room fell silent, the weight of the revelation overwhelming any defense. Elisangela firmly explained how Pedro's conduct compromised her credibility. The attack was calculated, and the impact was immediate. The audio not only shocked the directors, but also shook the team's confidence in Pedro. He tried to defend himself, claiming the matter was irrelevant to the work, but Elisangela counterattacked with precision. "A leader who lies and manipulates in his personal life doesn't inspire confidence in the business," she said, looking directly at her bosses. She presented figures that questioned Pedro's competence in the project, pointing out errors he had tried to cover up. The room, previously dominated by his confidence, now saw him as an imposter. The directors, visibly uncomfortable, called a break to discuss. Elisangela, as she put away her laptop, felt Pedro's gaze, a mixture of anger and fear. He knew she had won this round. In the hallways, colleagues were already whispering about the scandal, and the wedding video, which had gone viral on social media, reinforced Elisangela's narrative. The company, pressured by the public exposure and her competence, faced a clear choice: support the truth or protect a liar. Elisangela knew that their decision would seal Pedro's fate. During the break, Pedro tried to approach Elisangela backstage, his tone a mix of pleading and arrogance. "You're destroying my life out of revenge," he accused, but she merely smiled. "You destroyed your life when you chose to betray Pedro." Her calm disarmed him, and he returned to the room defeated. When the meeting resumed, the directors announced an immediate review of the project and Pedro's leadership. Elisangela, with her impeccable performance, was praised for her transparency and competence. The contrast between the two was clear. She, a respected professional; he, a manager whose reputation was crumbling. Rumors began to circulate about a possible suspension, while Elisangela maintained her composure, knowing the audio had merely been the trigger. Her reputation within the company, built with years of dedication, spoke louder than Pedro's lies. Vengeance at work wasn't just personal. It was a demonstration that truth and competence always prevailed. Pedro's fate was sealed, and Elisangela felt victory pulsing through her veins. The outcome of the meeting marked the beginning of Pedro's downfall in the corporate world. The directors, after a quick analysis, decided that Elisangela would lead the project, while Pedro would undergo a re-evaluation of his position. The public humiliation of his marriage now extended to work, where he could no longer hide his failings. Elisangela, upon returning to her desk, received messages from colleagues congratulating her courage. The audio, already circulating among employees, made Pedro a pariah in the office. He who had once boasted of his rise now avoided eyes. Aware that his career hung by a thread, Elisangela, on the other hand, felt a renewed sense of peace. Revenge at work was not just about taking him down, but about affirming her worth. She had proven herself to be more than a victim of betrayal. She was an unstoppable force. The meeting that exposed Pedro marked the beginning of his irreversible downfall. In the following days, the company's board, pressured by the public scandal and Elisangela's competence, made a clear decision. In a corporate email, they announced that Elisangela would assume leadership of the project, while Pedro would be transferred to a remote position with minimal responsibilities and constant supervision. The demotion was a humiliation disguised as a reorganization. Pedro, who had previously strutted the halls with arrogance, now avoided eye contact, aware that colleagues were whispering about his betrayal. Elisangela, on the other hand, shone, receiving praise for her skill and courage. The audio of the wedding, which continued to circulate online, made Pedro a toxic figure within the company. Rumors suggested that his dismissal was imminent, merely a formality. Elisangela, upon reading the email, felt a quiet satisfaction. Pedro's punishment wasn't just professional, it was the destruction of the facade he had built. He had underestimated his strength, and now he paid the price. Justice, slowly but surely, began to be served. Pedro's new position was a sentence of isolation. Working from home, he was excluded from important meetings and lost the prestige he once valued. Colleagues who had previously fawned over him now ignored him, and the few who maintained contact did so out of pity. Elisangela, meanwhile, consolidated her position in the company, masterfully leading the project. Her impeccable reports and professional demeanor contrasted with Pedro's decline. She heard from colleagues that he tried to justify his actions, claiming to be the victim of a misunderstanding. But the audio recording of the wedding, combined with the public exposure, rendered his excuses useless. The reputation he had spent years building had crumbled in a matter of weeks. Elisangela, in a meeting with the directors, received an official promotion, a recognition that reinforced her victory. Pedro, informed of the news, felt the weight of his own downfall. The company had chosen Elisangela not only for her competence, but because she represented integrity. Peter's punishment was a reminder that actions have consequences, and he was learning this the hard way. While Pedro was sinking, Elisangela was flourishing. The contrast between them was evident in the company corridors, where she was greeted with respect, while he was only a name mentioned in whispers. The expectation of her dismissal hung like a dark cloud. Inside sources revealed that directors were already discussing her departure, waiting only for the project to be completed, to formalize it. Pedro, aware of this, tried to cling to his position, sending desperate emails to his superiors, but his messages were ignored. Elisangela, on the other hand, was receiving invitations for new projects, her career on the rise. The revenge at work, precisely orchestrated, was not just about bringing him down, but about showing who she truly was. Pedro, who had once belittled her, now watched his ex-wife shine while he crumbled. The destruction of his reputation was not just professional, it was social, personal, total. He had lost everything he valued, and Elisangela, with her quiet strength, emerged as the true victor. Pedro's downfall extended beyond the office. On social media, the wedding video continued to circulate, with comments labeling him a traitor and a liar. Former friends and colleagues drifted away, and even clients began to question his credibility. The remote position with irrelevant tasks was a daily humiliation, a reminder of his choices. Elisangela, meanwhile, received messages of support from colleagues and even strangers who followed the story online. Her promotion elevated her to a level Pedro would never reach. In a last-ditch attempt to save face, he requested a meeting with the directors, but was met with coldness. The decision had already been made. His dismissal would be announced soon, a formality after months of mediocre performance. Elisangela, now a respected leader, watched from afar, knowing that justice needed no further effort from her. Pedro was reaping what he had sown, and each day of isolation was a deserved punishment. The company, in choosing Elisangela, recognized not only her talent, but also her truth. Her victory was complete, while Pedro faced the emptiness of his own downfall. Pedro's collapse was the outcome Elisangela had always imagined. Without the status, respect, and trust of his peers, he had become a shadow of the man he once was. The company, by retaining her and demoting him, sent a clear message. Integrity mattered more than facade. Elisangela, by assuming leadership, not only defeated Pedro, but rewrote her own story. She was no longer the betrayed wife, but a woman who had transformed pain into power. Pedro, isolated in his remote position, received formal emails about his re-evaluation, but knew his dismissal was inevitable. His reputation, once his greatest asset, was now a burden. Meanwhile, Elisangela received internal awards and offers of new challenges, her career a reflection of her resilience. Pedro's punishment was more than professional. It was the loss of everything he valued. Elisangela, witnessing his downfall, felt a renewed sense of peace. The humiliation in her marriage and Pedro's downfall at work marked the beginning of Carla's downfall. Seeing Pedro's reputation and future crumble, she began to question her own choice. The man who had promised a brilliant future was now an outcast. Isolated in a remote position and on the verge of dismissal, Carla, who had showcased herself as an influencer on social media, felt the weight of the exposed truth. Her followers, once enchanted by her bridal photos, now bombarded her with cruel comments about the betrayal. Desperate, she tried to maintain the facade, posting motivational quotes, but the public was unforgiving. One night, after a heated argument, Carla abandoned Pedro, leaving him alone in her apartment. "You ruined everything," she screamed, throwing the engagement ring at him. The woman who had once betrayed her sister out of ambition now saw her world crumble. Without Pedro, without status, and without support, Carla decided to seek refuge in her parents' house, believing that Dona Clara and Seu Antonio would take her in. But she had underestimated the depth of the hurt she had caused. Carla's downfall was just beginning, and Elisangela watched from afar with a growing peace. Carla arrived at her parents' house with a suitcase and a rehearsed speech, hoping for compassion. Dona Clara opened the door, but her gaze was cold, devoid of the maternal affection of old. "What do you want here, Carla?" she asked, her voice firm. Carla, with tears in her eyes, pleaded, "Mum, I made a mistake, but I'm your daughter. Let me stay." Dona Clara, however, was relentless. "You chose to betray your sister and our family. There's no room for you here." Seu Antonio in the background nodded silently, confirming the decision. Carla, shocked, tried to appeal, but the door slammed shut in her face. The rejection was a devastating blow. Without her parents, without Pedro, and without friends who had drifted away after the scandal, Carla was alone. She rented a small room in a remote neighborhood, far from the glamour she had longed for. To survive, she got 2 jobs, one as a cashier in a supermarket, the other as a waitress in a bar. The influencer who dreamed of luxury now faced exhausting shifts, while Elisangela, strengthened, moved forward, free from the weight of betrayal. Carla's days became a routine of struggle and humiliation. At the grocery store, she faced curious looks from customers who recognized her from the viral wedding video. At the bar, the night shifts left her exhausted, with little time to dream about the past. Her social media, once full of likes, now awash with criticism and mockery. She tried to delete her posts, but the internet wouldn't forget. Meanwhile, Elisangela received invitations to speak at the company, her story of overcoming adversity inspiring colleagues. The difference between the sisters was stark. One, rebuilt; the other, sunk in ruin. Carla, in a moment of desperation, tried to contact Elisangela, sending a message asking for forgiveness. "I didn't know how much I hurt you. Please forgive me," she wrote. But Elisangela, now at peace, didn't respond. She didn't need an apology. Justice had already spoken for itself. Carla, rejected by her family and society, faced the consequences of her choices, while Elisangela found serenity in her new life. Carla's loneliness was a reflection of her betrayal. Without the support of her parents, who prioritized loyalty to Elisangela, and without Pedro, whom she herself had abandoned, Carla lived in a cycle of regret and survival. Her jobs barely paid the bills, and her dream of becoming an influencer had crumbled along with her reputation. In rare moments of free time, she would see Elisangela's posts on the company's social media channels, receiving awards and smiling confidently. The envy that had once driven her was now replaced by a profound emptiness. Carla tried one last time to reach out to her parents, sending a letter full of promises of change, but Donna Clara returned it unopened. "You made your choices," was the only response written on a note. Elisangela, meanwhile, began attending a support group for women who have overcome betrayal, sharing her story and inspiring others. Carla's downfall was complete, but for Elisangela, it was simply the closing of a painful chapter, opening space for a new beginning. As Carla faced her new reality, Elisangela found peace. The pain of betrayal, though still a memory, no longer defined her. She traveled with her parents for a weekend in the countryside, where they laughed and shared plans for the future. Donna Clara proudly said, "You taught us strength, daughter." Elisangela, now free, felt justice had been served. Carla, on the other hand, lived with the weight of her actions, working tirelessly to survive while her sister thrived. The story of the two sisters, once intertwined by betrayal, now followed opposite paths. Elisangela learned that true revenge was not just the punishment of others, but the reclaiming of her own happiness. Moral of the story: betrayal can hurt deeply, but the strength to overcome and seek justice comes from within. Never underestimate the power of those who choose to rise again. What did you think of this story? Leave a comment, like it, and subscribe to the channel for more stories of overcoming and justice.